Erwin Johannes Eugen Rommel was born in 1891 in Heidenheim, Bavaria, in a home marked by order and strictness. His father, a school principal, was a man of unwavering principles who believed that discipline and education shaped character more than anything else. The household routine was precise: punctual meals, silence for study, praise and reprimands measured with exactitude. Every gesture, every word seemed recorded in an invisible diary of expectations that Erwin could never ignore. But young Erwin did not share this fascination with blind order. His gaze wandered among the clouds, into the blue sky that seemed endless. He drew airplanes in hidden notebooks, imagined machines that could cut through the wind and carry his mind far from the rigidity surrounding him. He dreamed of freedom, of horizons that life on solid ground would never allow him to touch. I wanted to fly, not march. I wanted the wind on my face, not mud under my feet. But perhaps one day the sky will call me in another way. Despite his free spirit, Erwin grew understanding that life would demand difficult choices. At 19, he entered the cadet school, fulfilling a social and familial expectation that was almost inevitable. Germany, then a proud and expanding empire, demanded obedience and service. There, amidst meticulous marches, discipline exercises and lessons on military tactics, Rommel absorbed lessons that would shape his future: the importance of strategy, timing, organization, and command. Yet his heart continued to beat to its own rhythm, slow, observant, human. He admired military precision but yearned for the freedom of the sky and the wind that could never be disciplined. The true test of his character came with the First World War. At 23, full of youthful idealism, Erwin entered the conflict with the enthusiasm of one who believes in the nobility of service. But soon the war revealed its brutal face: chaos, destruction, constant fear, and meaningless death. Every battle is a lesson that man should never have to learn. I saw friends fall, villages vanish, children disappear into fire and mud. How can I call this service? But if no one leads, chaos becomes absolute. Yet Rommel found in war an unexpected stage for his natural aptitude for strategy. Unlike many officers, he did not command from afar. He was always on the front lines, first to attack, last to retreat. He witnessed human suffering up close: courage, weakness, fear, pain. Every decision he made carried the weight of fates he could not control. And paradoxically, it was through this intimate contact with war that Rommel preserved his humanity. He did not harden, but learned to value life, even amidst death. After the conflict ended, Germany was broken. Hunger, despair, and humiliation spread to every corner. Many soldiers returned without hope, many citizens without faith. But Rommel kept his conviction: a true commander must never send men to die in vain. He believed in duty, but also in morality, even when the world seemed to forget both. A man may win battles, but if he loses his humanity, what is the use of victory? In the years that followed, this balance between discipline, strategy, and humanity would define every step of his career. And although his dreaming spirit still looked to the sky, reality was shaping him for a path where courage and compassion walked side by side, a path the world would one day come to know as that of the Desert Fox. When World War II began, Erwin Rommel was still a relatively unknown name outside the most restricted military circles in Germany. To most, he was just another disciplined, competent, and ambitious officer, someone who performed his duties diligently but was unlikely to stand out beyond expectations. Few could have imagined that this reserved and meticulous man, with his sharp gaze and strategic mind, would soon become synonymous with courage and military brilliance. But the deserts of North Africa were about to transform him into far more than an ordinary officer, into a true legend. In 1941, Adolf Hitler entrusted Rommel with command of the Afrika Korps, the German force sent into the inhospitable African desert. It was an almost impossible mission, a test that would crush most experienced generals. The terrain was relentless, scorching days that sapped strength and fueled thirst, freezing nights that chilled the bones, sandstorms that blinded soldiers and machines, rare shelters and always limited supplies. For many, the desert meant only death and defeat. But Rommel saw something different, something few leaders could perceive. Freedom to think, freedom to move boldly, and above all, freedom to surprise the enemy. The desert understands me. Every dune is a curve in destiny, every sandstorm a test for body and mind. Here time bends in my favour and, at the same time, becomes my sentence, Rommel would say, reflecting on the vastness that seemed eternal and challenging. On the battlefield, he moved with almost supernatural speed and precision. He struck at unexpected points, vanished like a shadow, and reappeared in another strategic location, as if he had eyes and ears everywhere. His manoeuvres were meticulously planned, based on careful calculation and intelligence, yet flexible enough to improvise in unpredictable situations. The British learned to fear Rommel's name, but strangely, they did not hate him. He inspired respect even among his adversaries. Rommel was a rare combination, a tactical genius, able to think 10 moves ahead, and at the same time, a deeply humane man. He remembered his soldiers' names, knew their life stories, understood the fears they carried, and felt the weight of every decision. Every movement on the map represented not just territory gained or a strategic victory, but human lives that depended on him, lives that relied on his intelligence, courage, and discernment. I cannot let mere survival instinct guide me. Every arrow on the map represents a man, every point of advance, a future interrupted. And yet, it is my duty to move forward. It is my responsibility to turn strategy into protection and opportunity into hope for those who follow me, Rommel reflected as the desert's scorching wind carried dust from past battles, reminding him that every victory came at a cost. In the heart of the desert, Erwin Rommel was more than a commander. He became the embodiment of courage, intelligence, and humanity, a man who transformed adversity into a stage for his genius and whose name would forever be etched into the memory of military history. As the battles in the North African desert raged on, Erwin Rommel's reputation grew at a meteoric pace. His name began to echo among allies and enemies alike, carrying both respect and fear. Yet, despite his rising prestige and impressive victories, his heart remained intact. Unlike many other commanders of the Nazi regime, Rommel refused to give in to cruelty and senseless brutality. For him, war did not justify inhumanity. He treated prisoners of war with dignity, ensured minimal survival conditions, refused to allow unnecessary deaths, and firmly believed that a man's honor was more important than any ideology or authoritarian command. The enemy is human too. Their mistakes, their choices, their suffering, all of it reflects ourselves. I will never forget that, Rommel would say, reflecting on each battle and every life taken or spared. He saw enemy soldiers not merely as adversaries, but as people with histories, fears, and hopes, just like his own men. His soldiers followed him not out of fear, as was common with many officers, but out of deep respect, almost reverence. To Rommel, every man was more than a number or a cog in the war machine. Each soldier had a name, a family, memories, and dreams. He remembered birthdays, childhood stories, wives and children left behind, and even the small quirks that made those who faced death daily human. Every order he gave, every planned offensive weighed heavily on his conscience. How can I look my men in the eyes and say, "Advance," when I know exactly what awaits them? How can I endure the images of pain that will be etched in my mind forever? Rommel reflected, carrying the weight of responsibility like a silent burden. His compassion and sensitivity began to arouse suspicion in the regime's high command. For many, tears and humane actions were seen as signs of weakness, not strength. Hitler admired his military genius and recognized his strategic ability, but deeply despised his heart. Rommel, in turn, began to question not only military strategies but also fundamental principles. Am I really fighting for my country or merely feeding a machine of hatred and destruction? Where does duty end and moral servitude begin? How far can I obey without betraying my conscience? He wondered, restless in the face of each difficult decision. Even at the height of his military glory, Rommel felt the crushing weight of morality in every action. He wanted to win battles, but never at any cost. He wished to protect his men, yet knew he could not prevent all the pain and suffering war demanded. Each offensive, each advance in the desert became an ethical and emotional dilemma, a challenge that required not only intelligence and strategy, but humanity and moral courage. Amid the scorching sands and freezing nights of the desert, Erwin Rommel became more than a renowned commander. He became an example that even in times of war, honor, compassion and conscience could coexist with military brilliance. In 1944, Erwin Rommel began to see the truth that many refused to accept. Germany was on the brink of collapse. Past victories in the desert no longer mattered in the face of the devastation approaching the heart of the country. He, who had once sworn to protect the regime, began to distance himself from Hitler's blind orders, questioning the morality of a government that sacrificed innocent lives in pursuit of reckless ambition. More and more, the general reflected on his choices and responsibilities, realizing that blind obedience could no longer be his guide. Secretly, Rommel joined a select group of officers planning to overthrow the Führer. The July 20th conspiracy was underway, but the risk was immense. A single misstep would mean immediate death, not only for the conspirators but also for their families, who could be punished cruelly and mercilessly. Every secret meeting, every exchanged message was a test of courage and loyalty, where the slightest hesitation could spell ruin. I can no longer be just a soldier. I can no longer follow orders that destroy innocence and stain my conscience with the blood of others. If it costs me my life, so be it. But my men and my family must survive. I have a duty to protect them, even if it means facing my own end, Rommel said in silence, carrying the weight of responsibility like a constant shadow on his shoulders. When the assassination attempt failed, the Gestapo began meticulously tracking every name involved in the conspiracy. Rommel was too beloved by the people and the military to be executed publicly, but the choice imposed on him was cruel and inevitable: take poison in silence or face the complete destruction of his family and those he loved. It was a decision no man should ever have to make, and yet there he was, facing reality with courage and dignity. On the morning of October 14, 1944, Rommel donned his uniform for the last time. Every medal, every insignia seemed to carry the weight of a lifetime of service and sacrifice. He stepped into a black car with firm strides and gave a slight, composed smile, as one who accepts the inevitable without losing dignity. Minutes later, he ingested the poison that would seal his fate. His death was quiet, almost solemn, yet it carried the strength of a life dedicated to honor, loyalty, and humanity. I accept my fate. Not out of cowardice, but to protect those I love. Let my tears be remembered, not my silence. Let my story show that even in the darkest times, it is possible to act with conscience, courage, and love, were his final reflections, leaving an indelible mark on the memory of history. Rommel did not die as an ordinary soldier. He died as a man who, to the very end, chose humanity over blind obedience, compassion over power, and the protection of his loved ones over his own life. His memory endured, not only as a brilliant military strategist, but as an example of integrity and moral courage amid the chaos of war. The news of Erwin Rommel's death spread quickly throughout Germany and beyond its borders. The regime, eager to control the narrative, proclaimed him a national hero, praising his loyalty and military brilliance. But those who truly knew the truth, His closest officers, friends, and family cried in silence. They knew that the man who had passed was not just an extraordinary general, but someone who carried humanity as his greatest weapon. Surprisingly, even British generals, former adversaries who had felt the full weight of his brilliant manoeuvres on the battlefield, sent letters of condolence to his family. A rare, almost unimaginable gesture in wartime, it demonstrated the profound respect Rommel inspired, even in those who had fought against him. Each message contained words of admiration and recognition. He was not only feared but understood, respected, and remembered for his integrity. Rommel left an extraordinary legacy, one that transcended medals, victories, or conquered territory. He left humanity. He left compassion. He left moral courage. A legacy that reminded the world that a man's true greatness lies not just in his ability to lead, but in his capacity to protect, feel, and care for those who depend on him. I did not hate. I held no grudges. I fought for what was right, even when the world demanded cruelty. Let my memory serve to remind that one can be a soldier and still remain human. Strength is not measured only in battles won, but in the courage to remain upright when everything around demands hardness, were some of his final reflections recorded in the quiet of his conscience. Rommel showed the world that true strength does not come from ignoring suffering, from hardening the heart in the face of others' pain. True strength lies in having the courage to feel, to empathize, and to care, even when the world seems to demand brutality and indifference. He cried before battles, not out of weakness, but because he still had the strength to feel, to understand the weight of life and death. And it was precisely this ability to feel and act with conscience, that became his greatest victory. In a world that had often lost its soul, Rommel demonstrated that true glory lies not in destruction, but in preserving humanity amid chaos. He taught us that moral courage is greater than any military victory, and that the memory of a man of integrity can transcend generations. Rommel's legacy resonates to this day, not just as a brilliant strategist, but as an eternal symbol that even in times of war, it is possible to be strong without losing your heart, firm without losing compassion, and heroic without ever abandoning humanity. Those who hear his story come to understand, finally, that a man's greatest victory is not on the battlefield, but in the ability to fight while remaining human.